Hello, Helena. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Why don't we jump right in and talk about food and politics, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. So, as everybody knows, if they've been listening to the podcast, we like to start out with something called the double take. And that's something that's happening in the news that is so surprising and typically not so great that it just makes you do a double take. And this week, I think it should be the reorganization of the USDA, where basically they're closing down a lot of the staff. In DC and moving them out into the hinterland to get closer to the farmers. Tell me, Helena, what do you think about this? Is this a good idea?
The hinterland, first of all, may not be the best description.
Well, yeah, it's Raleigh.
Oh,
That's
no,
true.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read you the 5 hub locations: Fort
Yeah.
Collins, Colorado; Salt Lake City;
Mhm.
Indianapolis; Raleigh; and Kansas City. So it's not the hinterland, but outside of DC. And what's interesting is like USDA's, 90% of their 100,000 employees are already outside of DC. But this would move like the bulk of the staff. I think it's like 2,600 workers from the DC area outside, and this would just be really disruptive. And a lot of people think it's going to result in a major brain drain. During Trump 1, they tried to move just one division, the Economic Research Service, or they actually did move it to Kansas City, and they lost the majority of the economists there. They just didn't want to move. It's super disruptive. So
And Trump moved the Bureau of Land Management too to Grand Junction, Colorado during his first term, right? And then Biden moved it back.
yeah, so
So,
how, yeah, and I don't know how many employees they lost during that, but you just assume that there is a lot of, they're marketing this as we're not laying anyone off. We're not doing a reduction in force, which is much, I guess, less disruptive than the other, agencies have gotten thousands of workers cut from their programs, their departments. They're like, oh, we're not laying people off, but you're gonna lose a lot of people when this happens. Like there is a brain drain to an
yeah.
extent. It could be half, it could be more than half, could be the majority. So the lawmakers seem to be kind of worried about this. Even Republicans were really miffed that they didn't get briefed about it. Like they
Well,
didn't
but that
know.
was for a different reason, wasn't it? They wanted to bid on
They
the
wanted
on the location of these new
Yeah, they
hubs, right?
want
They
North
they wanted
Dakota is looking
yeah.
good for Senator John Hoeven. He's like, what are we doing? I think that's part
Which
of
is
it.
actually not a bad point, right? So
Yeah. They don't
let's
have
let's
they
try
didn't
to
have an open process about where to
yeah.
move these, which they did with the move of ERS, which was very disruptive, but they did have a process to pick the location and all of that.
So let's talk. Let's start with sort of accepting the logic here at face value,
Hmm.
and talk about why would this be a good thing? Why is there a reason
Hmm.
to move all of these folks out of DC and get them out to Indianapolis and Fort Collins and all the points in between?
I mean, the number one reason is cost of living. DC
Yeah.
area is really expensive, so you have to pay folks more, and it's also harder to recruit like young talent if they can't, they come to DC, they can't afford to buy a house. Like it's just expensive. So like, you have that barrier. I think their argument is that you can save the government money because you don't have to pay as high of salaries, and you can like recruit young people and just to lower cost places where it's easier to live. I think that all like makes sense to people. It's the moving seasoned people who already have ties to DC that is going to be disruptive. Like you're just going to have folks who won't move, can't move, their kids might be in school, in high school, or a time where it's just really disruptive, and there's just a lot of people who won't do it.
Well, all right. So you live in DC. I mean, I know you're out in Washington State right now, but you are a person of the Beltway.
Yeah.
And do you think that they will be able to get the same level of talent and quality of employee and dedication levels of employee if you move them around the country and put them in different places? That's just one part of it.
Yeah.
Will it harm the output?
So I think in the short term, it probably will harm the output just because it's so disruptive. But I think like the overall argument of having government agencies spread around the country is like a compelling one. Like I don't think anyone is like, oh, a USDA employee in Fort Collins is like less talented than an employee who's at the USDA Agricultural Research Service in Beltsville, Maryland, which by the way is a huge campus. It's like 6,000 acres out in Maryland. It's really an interesting place if you ever get a chance to go. I'm not sure what their plans are for that, but that's like a massive real estate. So I have like, it's been on my to-do list, like what is going to happen with that? Like they do a lot of ag research there, but this is now very desirable, real estate in the DMV, the DC Metro,
DMV.
DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Like, what does that stand for? So, it's disruptive, but I think the idea that you have government agencies other places is probably pretty popular. Like, I don't know that just on its face it's like harder to recruit people. I don't think that's the issue. It's how disruptive it is, and the worries from members of Congress is that it will actually disrupt key services that USDA provides, whether it's like looking at, conservation programs or all of these other ways that farmers are served right now, grant applications, a lot of that is through DC. And so if you're having mass attrition, like that will affect those programs. I think that's where the concern is. It's like how you do it. Are they doing this in a way that is designed to shrink USDA? Or are they doing this in a way that is designed to really thoughtfully and slowly transition certain agencies out of the
Well, but they're
DC
obviously
area?
not doing it thoughtfully and slowly. They are doging themselves, even with Elon Musk out of DC. That is, I don't know if that's a concern, but that seems to be the underlying narrative here. How do we, or if you're sitting where I'm sitting and you're skeptical
Mm-hmm.
of the federal, of the White House, and you're skeptical of Brooke Rollins as a supposed moderate within the government, you get a little bit concerned, quote unquote, that they're really just looking to decimate the USDA, and that's what's driving
I
this.
think I think it's fair to assume that that shrinking the workforce is part of the goal here, even though they're not marketing it that way. I also
Yeah.
would take issue. I don't think Brooke Rollins is a moderate, and I don't think she would even call herself one. I think people view her that way because she is not in the headlines like some of the other folks in the cabinet,
Yeah.
or maybe has she's not as into I don't know, maybe social, she hasn't come up through like the social media sort of podcasting world. I don't know, but
She
uh,
wasn't a Fox News
she
commentator or
wasn't.
something. Yes.
So she's had a different path. It's been a little more think tanky, a little more MAGA establishment, right? So anyway, but I just want to take issue with that. I don't think she or anyone would call her moderate. And I do think, they're not overall, the Trump administration is not being coy about, like, they are trying to shrink the agencies. Like they are trying to cut the size of the federal government. Like they're not pretending.
They're not kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not
they're not
kidding. They're
pretending.
not
And
pretending.
if you look at like Project 2025, I mean, their goal was to like eliminate or cut a lot of parts of the government, and that's what they're doing now. So, but this will be a longer path. They're taking comment. Like the Hill's gonna, this isn't something that's gonna like happen with the snap of a finger. Like there will be a process, but we'll see how much pushback they get on Capitol Hill. And is it, to your point, like more like bring this part of USDA to my state, or is it like, no, we think this is a bad idea and we're worried that it will disrupt services? We'll see.
All right. I think, yes, we will see. And we'll also see if there's a new president in however many years, if we ever have another president of this United States, or if this will be Trump forever, whether this just gets undone
Yeah.
and what the outcomes of
Yeah.
that are. Because there's a belief among people who don't agree with the Trump administration. Oh, well, if we
All this
got
stuff. Yeah.
control of the government,
Yeah.
we could just undo it. But I don't think that's really all that easy to do. And the damage is done anyway.
I think when
right?
you shed employees, that's really hard to undo, because it's not just, I mean, the federal hiring process is super slow. It takes a really long time to get people in. But I think the thing that's the most damaging for getting talent into the federal government is all of this uncertainty, the riffing, the reorgs, the doging, all of that, like, creates this, a lot of people who work in the federal government kind of make this trade, right? They might make less money than they could in the private sector, but they have other benefits. Like there's more job stability, there's more predictability in terms of like where your career path and your benefits, and like, so you've made kind of that trade. Well, if you don't have predictability and you don't have like job security and all that, then like what's the trade you're making to make a lower salary in the federal government? So I think that's where you're going to have issues. And that's just not USDA, that's all across the board. Like it's just a less desirable place to work. It's chaotic, and in some cases they're being quite adversarial to the employees. So
That is the phenomenon.
that's the bigger thing, I think.
I agree with that completely. So with that in hand, as now that we have found alignment between each other, why don't we move on to our next segment, which is called Forks and Knives, and that's basically the main meal that's happening in the United States right now in food politics, the status quo. And I think what we should talk about, because I think this is a very important question for all of our episodes, and it's one that I can never really answer. Why is MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, so popular?
Yeah. I've been thinking
Let's start there, Helena.
I've been thinking about this so much. I spent the last couple weeks working on my first guest essay for the New York Times, which people can go read. I think if you just look up like is
Let's
Kennedy,
just pause there for
yeah.
a second.
Well, we'll do it in the notes. Yeah.
But that was a really good article to read. You should all read it, and it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, but so go read it. Well, I think we can put it in the show notes as like complimentary reading for this. But
That's right.
I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like what I was looking at is this realignment, right? You hear Republicans, I covered the Let's Move era. They were all like, why is Michelle Obama talking about obesity? Like, this is a nanny state. Why are we talking about improving food or nutrition? Or like, why are we going to do school meals? They hated it. They fought it every turn. And I remember that because I covered it, right? And so now I'm watching all these Republicans going, oh my gosh, there's been a total realignment. They're all into wellness and like big food is bad and like we need to do something. And so I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been going through all the polling and it's astonishing how popular a lot of this stuff is, not just on the right, but on the left. Like the data is showing there's kind of this converging happening. And it kind of explains what we're seeing. We're like, why is this? It feels kind of disorienting when you've been in food and ag for a while. There's all these new actors. There's all these new angles. I mean, you're seeing it. Like,
well, let's pause here for a second. All right. So let's talk about polls and what we mean by polls. So my question for you is, when you say that these things are popular when they are polling, do you mean that the potential for increased outcomes for better nutrition in the United States is popular among both Democrats and Republicans? That's one. Or do you mean that MAHA itself, as a movement, as it is currently constituted, and its tone and tenor, do you think that that is popular among Democrats and Republicans?
Yeah, okay, so good question and good distinction. Make America Healthy Again, the name is not really that popular. It's moderately popular. The ideas within it, some of the food, to be clear, we're talking about the food ideas. The vaccine stuff, unpopular and deeply polarizing in the polling. Like, it's not even all that popular with Republicans. But if you look at the food stuff, the ag stuff, it's polling really, really well. So it's the actual ideas within MAHA. And these are some of the findings that I found like most astonishing. So there was a poll last fall that really dug into some of the ideas. Like, one of the most popular idea that they found was mandatory nutrition education in federally funded medical schools. Okay, so this idea that like doctors don't learn about nutrition, we should mandate that they do if they get federal funding. And this is wildly popular. 84% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans. Like, there aren't that many issues where,
well, let's pause right there for a second. Put the Republicans aside. I mean, you talked about their reaction to Michelle Obama's work in Obama during the Obama era, and Republicans opposed it reflexively. But the question for me is not so much why is this so popular right now among Democrats and Republicans. It's an obviously good idea. It reflects where people are. The real question is, why were Democrats unable to do anything about this? What prevented them from acting on common sense, advances for nutrition?
I have theories about this. Well, okay, so to be fair, Biden did hold like a White House conference on food and nutrition, and they did like lay out the first ever like national strategy on all these issues. So it's not like they didn't do things, but it was not a top political priority. It was not something they were willing to expend political capital on. And I mean, I'll speak to particularly during the Obama era, Democrats have always been so afraid of being anti-business or being like, that nanny state argument that was made against, or really accusation that was thrown at First Lady Michelle Obama really hurt them. Like, it was scary and politically hurtful. It was biting, cutting, like that it stung, right? It was
Yeah.
it was really hard. And I think that Democrats are very anxious about like not going too far or not, or not being they don't want to be anti-growth, right? They want to be pro-growth and they also want to do these things. And so I think part of that is like being afraid. And then also, I frankly, I don't think they had the political support, and they definitely didn't have the political support on the right. Now they do. Like, this is super bipartisan when you look at all this. And so I don't know what they're going to do with it. But
that's a separate question. We'll get to that. But let's talk about that quote unquote bipartisanship. When you start digging into some of these surveys, again, moving away from the actual support for better nutrition in this country and coming back to the MAHA part of it, right? When you look at the MAHA polling, the reactions that you see there is that largely this is a partisan ideological movement. The people who support it on the right support it because they're on the right and because it is a movement of the right. Yep. And it seems to me that there's far more people like that than there are even like a flip-flopper like RFK Jr., who was a Democrat and is now a Republican, and I know you mentioned this in your New York Times article, Food Babe, whose actual name escapes me. What's her name?
Hari. Yep.
Vani Hari, how she used to be an Obama supporter and she jumped over to the Trump side of the street, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what are Democrats going to do about that? They are not willing to be as ruthless about these issues as their counterparts on the right seem to be, and so they end up joining the right, where there is no joining of the left or the center, right? It only flows to the right. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do about this? How are they going to be able to benefit from what could be happening?
Well, I think that, the Democrats have been watching all this unfold and they're like, well, do we want to work with RFK? Like, do we really don't like him? We don't like the vaccine stances. And you're seeing some of them start to get back in the game. Rosa DeLauro's working on a food additive legislation. You saw Cory Booker, who's really trying to push back against. There's a big fight right now over pesticide liability in Congress, and MAHA's like very upset with Republicans right now over it. And Cory Booker, a Dem in the Senate, is like the one representing the MAHA side. So there is some of that happening. I think like actually the MAHA identified folks, if you look at the issues, not the name, I think it's a lot more bipartisan and nonpartisan. And I think you have a lot of low information, parents in there who are just like, yeah, I mean, I don't really like politics, but I don't like food dyes. Like, I think there's actually a lot of those people who are not even super political, but they're like, they're persuadable into either camp. And I think right now you're seeing some of the more progressive food activists saying, we should be leaning in. We should take these people back. Like, these are gettable voters. These are basically like this is like a swing block. And if Democrats were to lean in, could they get these folks on their side? So I think that's a really interesting political question. It's a little bit early, but
I also think you can't really get away from the name, right? There was a survey that you sent me that was published by Farm Doc Daily, and in its conclusions they say most interesting and an area for further analysis is that both awareness, so you have to have heard of it, and perceptions of MAHA were related to political ideology. I just think that yet again, the Trump administration has managed to put their rivals and foes in a bind, right? They have staked out a position that Democrats either are forced to accept or reject at their own peril because they're rejecting something that's popular, right? It's a very, very poor spot to be in.
Did you also notice that one of the things they found is like, I think it was like one of the top predictors of being a MAHA supporter was like if you'd gone to a farmer's market. I think I had that right. It was in
right.
There.
That was right.
Like, I mean,
but not if you own a farm.
Not if you own a farm, to be clear.
Yes. We talked about this on an earlier podcast episode. The people who most were supportive of it tended to be people who had the least to actually do with the farming or food system. Because also talked about people who had worked in restaurants, not supporting.
Well, it's interesting though, because if you look at if you go down the list of the most popular ideas within MAHA, One of them is actually increasing restrictions on the use of pesticides in agriculture, and that's a 71 support Democrats, 66% Republicans. And what's interesting is the polling that they've looked at, Republicans have swung the most in favor of regulation, like 20 point swing in terms of whether or not you think agriculture and food need more regulation, which is just wild because we're in a deregulatory administration. So like there's just so much contradiction. And we've talked about this, like there's so much contradiction in that of like, what did voters hear when they heard these ideas and this platform and what they support? And then what are we going to actually get? And I think that's the huge question right now is like, what are they going to do with this, with this support and also with this, there's a lot of people who think that RFK played a major role in Trump winning in November. And so this isn't like some minor, political alliance here. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yes, eventually the PFAS will have to hit the road. I want to also just talk about when we talk about the popularity of some of these things. There was you sent this my way as well. It was some Ipsos data, and it said that, this is what I think is kind of interesting, right? So 6 out of 10 people in this particular survey said that they limit eating processed foods, with 44% saying they prioritize organic foods or those that minimize chemicals and pesticides. Now, if you're sitting in my chair, that word say, that is doing a lot of work, right? I mean, what does that actually mean? What are people talking about when they say that they're looking to reject these products? Are they waiting for the food companies to reject it for them? Do they want the government to come in and force them to stop using it? Or is this just, I don't know, is this just all part of a national imagination that we're not tapping into?
Well, first of all, I do think people are dishonest about what they eat. Like we know that.
You think?
We know that.
Yeah.
But I think what that reflects is that people are starting to get the message that there is a lot of research that ultra-processed food consumption, higher consumption of ultra-processed foods are associated with a lot of poor health outcomes. Like there's been so many headlines about that in particularly the last 2 years, like the book Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Tullochen, tons of coverage of that. There's been so much focus. And so I think the message is getting out. And actually there was a New York Times piece a couple of days ago really digging into how the big food companies are struggling. Like their demand's going down. And it's like how much of it is MAHA and this wellness train and all this ultra processed food negative vibes, right? And how much of it's GLP-1s, which are also happening at the same time. Like they're under a lot of pressure. And so there is some real shift happening, but it's hard to suss out like what is what, right? Like how much of it is what people are seeing on Instagram about ultra processed foods, maybe from RFK, maybe from others. We have an FDA commissioner going, this stuff's bad for you. So, that does, I think, eventually seep into the national consciousness. So
I agree, but I also think what's most difficult there in terms of creating actual change, when you look at this data about who tries to avoid or ultra-processed foods and things like that, it tracks with age. And the groups that are the least likely to avoid ultra-processed food are young people, right? And that suggests to me that, that suggests a whole lot of things, but one of the things it suggests is that it will not be easy to rely on the American consumer to actually do something about these problems. And you're probably going to need the government, which leaves us right back at square one, because that's kind of impossible. Unless you have anything else to add, I think we should move on to our final section, the good vibes. And the good vibes, I think, is just a little something in the news that we find that we can take a little bit of hope out of. And for this one, I think this was great. I really enjoyed this one. It is the question of, and the New York Times attempts to answer this, is soda with sugar cane better for you than soda with high fructose corn syrup? And this is the key, does it taste better? What do you think?
Well, people
Helena?
say that it tastes better. I have not done a side-by-side taste comparison, but I think I would have also said that I could taste the difference, but I don't know if that's true. I do want to, before we get to this though, can we point out that like we were very correct in predicting that like this probably wasn't happening? Trump suggested.
You mean high fructose corn syrup going the way of the dodo bird?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like they are not wholesale switching. They are adding more options, right? Yes. Which is exactly what we thought was going to happen. I just want to point out that like that's what is happening now.
This fits with my basic belief about journalism, which is that if something is impossible, it's very
Not happening.
unlikely that it will actually come to be. So I don't know if we need to pat ourselves too
Well,
much on the back,
I mean,
but
but
you know,
it
we're
was literally those were the headlines. Like all the press
yes, you're
just
right.
said this was going to happen. It's like a good reminder that you should, take a beat and be like, is this really happening? I
Not so
love
much.
didn't they have the wine didn't they have the
Yeah.
wine
So
critic
let's
taste it? Yeah.
let's talk about what the New York Times
Yes.
did. So the New York Times did a comparison tasting,
Mhm.
and they brought in Eric Asimov, who is the wine critic in the New York Times, and they got 4 different things that you could try. One was Coca-Cola
Mhm.
Classic, which is sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. The
Mhm.
other is so-called, I guess, Mexican Coke, well, because it's not only made in Mexico and not only for sale in Mexico, which is imported and sweetened with cane sugar. Pepsi, sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, the regular stuff.
Mhm.
And then Pepsi Cola made with quote unquote real sugar, which could include both beet sugar and cane sugar. And they had them, I think I love this, by the way, as part of the taste test, Eric Asimov, they used potato chips
I
as a
loved that.
palate
It sounded
cleanser.
fun.
Uh,
Yeah.
it did sound fun. I mean, so before we talk about the outcomes of this, I want us to walk a little bit through the realities of the difference between high fructose corn syrup and sugar from a nutritional perspective. Do you, in your understanding of it, believe that a soda without high fructose corn syrup is in fact any better for you?
No, I think the experts are pretty clear on that it's not better for you. It's not like metabolically better. It's the same amount of sugar going into your body. It's a high sugar product without any fiber or anything else. And so everyone agrees this would not be like a big nutritional. There's just no nutrition gain here. The label
But
would
let's
look
just pause there for
simpler
a
and
second.
people might feel better about consuming it. It might get a health
But let's pause
halo.
there.
Yeah.
Let's pause there before we get angry commenters, which would be great. If anybody wants to be angry with us, they should tell us. All right. But we did talk a little bit about this on our last episode, and there is some research that shows that as far as that the impact of high fructose corn syrup on your quote unquote your gut biome, it leads to more inflammation. And this is a preoccupation of the MAHA
Mm-hmm.
movement as well, the impact of inflammation. It doesn't seem to be much of a difference, but there is a little unsettled science here, right? That they don't know exactly
Yeah.
how bad high fructose corn syrup can be for you in that respect.
I think
Is
there's a
that
lot.
right?
I think I don't know about that particular study, but there's still a lot we don't know about nutrition, and it would
Yeah.
not surprise me if we hadn't really studied that question very much because most nutrition experts would not view that as something that's super important to study because the bigger picture is that they don't want people consuming in as many sugar sweetened beverages, period. And so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like the focus. And it's like, you don't want to lose the forest or the trees. Like um, it is a sugar sweetened beverage. I mean, a can of Coke has like something like 35 grams of sugar in it with nothing else. I mean, that is a lot of sugar for your body to handle all at once, like just full stop. So I just think the nutrition part of it is really not the issue here. It's the vibes and it's like whether or not people feel better about consuming it. And I will say I'm in Bellingham, Washington right now, which is like a very like hippie kind of very it's foodie. It's a foodie place, okay? And I have seen out and about, I've noticed 3 different people drinking the glass bottle like Mexican Coke because it's like a thing to like get with your meal, it's like I think it's kind of hip now. And so and I
It also tastes better in the glass bottle, doesn't it? I
it
like it
does.
better in
It's
the
good.
glass bottle. It's
Yeah.
more I don't know if I'd pay for it all the
Significantly more
time,
expensive.
but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of a thing. And so I think and people have brought this up. I think there is some concern that there will be kind of a health halo around it, right? That like, oh, it's got sugar, it's like better for me. And folks are also worried about that with the food dyes and stuff. If people think, oh, well,
Well, all
they
right.
just
So
got it out. Yeah.
let's take that back to the New York Times and let's talk about the results of their taste test. And before we say what people preferred or they didn't prefer, one of the things that really amused me, mostly because it's just so darn true, which was no matter how you drank it, it was better with ice.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
all the test tasting was better
Way
with ice.
better.
And having just come from a family vacation in Europe where they never put any ice in my soda, I should just say, God bless America. We got the ice for our soda. At least we got that here in this country. So it seemed to me, if I were reading this study correctly, and I'm curious what you think about this, that we've already said the nutrition impact is very limited, if any. And in fact, from a flavor perspective, there was, at least among the people at the Times, there was no distinction. And in fact, well, I don't know if you noticed this, what was really the only distinction was that in a blind taste test, people still preferred Pepsi over Coke.
Yeah, that was wild to me, that it's like so much of it's the nostalgia and the branding and the
Yeah.
like the attachment we have to Coca-Cola. That must drive the
Yeah.
people at Pepsi crazy. That Pepsi does better in blind taste tests, but people still prefer Coke. That's what my takeaway was, and I was like, this is fascinating, right? And it makes you remember that food is about so
Yeah.
much more than just what it is, right?
I also think if there's like, and I'm forcing this a little bit here, but I mean, if there is a bigger takeaway, is that it is not easy to change people's minds about the things that they buy and eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, they did.
I
They
think,
thought
yeah.
Pepsi, what was it? Pepsi right with corn syrup was the winner. I think it was.
Let me look at my
I'm pretty
notes
sure
here.
it
I
was.
think you may be right.
And so you're like, well, who would have thought?
Who'd have thunk it, right? I like Pepsi. I like Coke.
And
I like them all.
that is according to the expert wine taster, or I don't know, wine critic. Is he the wine critic?
He is. I think he is. His title is senior wine critic or chief
Oh, they
wine
have
critic of the New
more
York
than
Times.
one wine critic.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I thought the Times stopped doing wine criticism. I used to remember, this was one of my peeves as many years ago reading the Times, was they would review wines in the Times, and I would say, that sounds really good, and then you could never find it anywhere.
Or you'd look at it, it'd be too expensive or something. Yeah.
Well, that's for sure. So I think we should leave it on that the New York Times has a wine critic, and that Pepsi is better, except if you are reading the label, in which case people still prefer Coke, and whatever that means. I'm not so sure. Helena, before we go, I think we should do what we always do, which is you should tell everyone how they can find Food Fix, which is your amazing newsletter.
Yeah, if you're interested in these issues, you can go to foodfix.co, drop your email there. It's a Friday newsletter. It's free. Get on the list.
Make sure you pay for it. Don't just do the free version.
There's another version that's paid, but start with the free versions. I think you'll love it. Yeah.
All right, well, Helena, as always, it's been a pleasure, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
All right, sounds good.